Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Dr. Barkis Ophthalmology Tutorials. Today we will discuss about the anatomy of the cornea. So in this video I will be discussing about the gross anatomy of the cornea as well as the histological section of the cornea, that is the each layer of the cornea with the relevant applied aspects as well as the blood supply and the nerve supply of the cornea. So without much delay, let's begin our video on anatomy of cornea. So what is cornea? As all of you know, it is a transparent avascular, so transparent avascular but highly innervated, it has very rich nerve supply, highly innervated watch glass like structure, which occupies the anterior 1/6 of the outer fibrous layer of eyeball. So this is the definition, or this is how you describe the cornea, that is transparent avascular highly innervated watch glass like structure which occupies the anterior 1/6 of the fibrous layer of the eyeball. So you might have heard the word kerato, which is being used to describe the cornea, like keratoglobus, keratoconus, or even the keratoplasty. The literal meaning of the kerato is shield or the horn like thing. So the word kerato is used whenever we are describing cornea. So coming to the embryology of cornea, we have 5 layers of the cornea. I will be describing them later. So from where all these layers are derived from? The superficial epithelium. So the superficial, that is the first layer of epithelium, is derived from the surface ectoderm. Next, the corneal stroma is derived from the mesoderm, whereas the endothelium as well as the keratocytes which are present in the corneal stroma are derived from the neural crest. So this is about the embryology. So next, moving on to the dimensions of the cornea, that is which comes under the gross anatomy of the cornea. So as you all know, it is an elliptical structure. It is not uniformly round from anterior side. So it is an elliptical structure when you see from the anterior side. So it is somewhat like this because the horizontal diameter is more than the vertical diameter. Horizontal diameter is 11.7 millimeter. Please note down it is in the millimeter, whereas the vertical diameter is 11 millimeter. This is from the anterior side. If you take from the posterior side, it is little circular with a uniform diameter of 11.5 millimeters. This is in the posterior surface. When you look at the thickness of the cornea, so if you take this as a cross section of the cornea, so when you take the thickness, in the center it is thin, it is around 0.5 millimeter or 550 to 560 micrometers. In the periphery it becomes little thicker with a thickness of 1 to 1.2 millimeter. The next is the radius of curvature. Most of you, I think, get confused with this radius of curvature. This is nothing but, see, this part of the cornea is a part of some sphere, whereas the sclera is part of the other sphere. The diameter of radius of both the corneal as well as the scleral spheres are not the same. So if you just extend this corneal surface and make a sphere here, so it has a diameter of around 8 millimeters. Whereas if you extend this scleral part and make a sphere, it has a diameter of around 12 millimeter. So the radius of curvature of cornea is 8 millimeter, whereas that of the sclera or the whole eyeball is 12 millimeters. The next important thing about the cornea is the refractive index. The refractive index of the cornea, 1.376. So what is this refractive index? So refractive index is the ratio of velocity of the light in the vacuum to that of some of the particular substance. So here we are taking the cornea. So the refractive index of the cornea is 1.376. The next is, what is the refractive power of the cornea? Refractive power, it is around 45 diopters. Means that is the converging power of the cornea. Whenever the light rays fall on the cornea which are straight, it is converged by the cornea. So that converging capacity of the cornea is around 45 diopters. If you consider the whole converging power of the eyeball is 60 diopters, the remaining 15 diopters is contributed by the crystalline lens. This is about the gross anatomy of the cornea. Next, moving on to the histological structure of the cornea. So we have 5 layers in the cornea, and you know the mnemonic, I think, A, B, C, D, E. So the anterior epithelium is the first layer. The next is Bowman's membrane. Third is C for stroma, D for Descemet's membrane, E for endothelium. So the anterior most is epithelium. Don't get confused with this E. So the anterior epithelium. The first layer is the anterior epithelium. Then we have the basement's membrane. Then the stroma, which occupies the major part of the cornea. Then we have Descemet's membrane, followed by the endothelial cells. So this is about the histological layer. So let's discuss each layer in detail now. So the first layer is the anterior epithelium. So if you consider the anterior surface of the cornea, the epithelium of the cornea is in continuity with the epithelium of the conjunctiva. So it has some 6 layers or 5 to 6 layers of epithelial cells are there. The deepest one are columnar epithelial cells. Okay. So the deepest one are columnar in appearance. Okay. It is single layer. Next comes the umbrella shaped or the wing shaped epithelial cells. The next 2 to 3 layer is umbrella shaped or the wing shaped cells. So this is 2 to 3 layer wing shaped cells. The superficial most are the flat cells. Okay. So this also contributes around 2 to 3 layers of flat cells. So these are the layers of epithelium. So how these are produced? So if you see in this picture, so this is the cornea. So we have the limbus here, that is the junction of the sclera and the cornea. And here we have the limbal stem cells. So these have the capacity to divide. So these will divide and contribute the cells to the epithelium. So once it is formed here, so it forms the basal layer first. Okay. As the days progresses, this will move on to the second layer and 2 to 3 layered wing shaped cells. And again, as the days goes on, it again moves to the top and forms the flat cells. In the topmost cells, that is the flat cells, these have little microvilli like thing. Okay. So this helps in adherence of the tear film to the cornea. Okay. To some extent, the tear film is attached to the cornea because of these microvilli. I will discuss in detail about the limbal stem cells in separate video. So this is about the epithelial cells of the cornea. So coming to the applied aspects here. So the epithelium is the first layer, hence more prone for injury. So there are chances of epithelial abrasion. Okay. Where there is loss of epithelium. So in those cases, the patient will have severe pain because the nerve endings which are there in the epithelium are exposed. Okay. So because of exposure of the nerve endings, patient will have severe pain and photophobia whenever there is epithelial abrasion. So how you detect that? With a careful slit lamp examination, you can detect the epithelial defect or the epithelial abrasion. If you are in doubt, you can use the fluorescent dye to stain the anterior surface. That will pick up the abrasion or the epithelial defect. So how much time does the epithelium take to heal? This is the common question which is asked. So for the basement membrane or the basal cells to replenish, it takes 1 day, that is 24 hours. But for the complete epithelial cells to come, it will take around 6 to 7 days or 1 week. Okay. Next, moving on to the second layer, that is Bowman's membrane. Okay. So this is the Bowman's membrane which is just adjacent to the epithelial cells. So this is named after the ophthalmologist, that is Williams Bowman. Okay. So the thickness of this Bowman's layer is around 8 to 14 micrometers. I forgot to tell about the thickness of the epithelium. The epithelial cells contribute around 50 micrometers. Okay. It has the compactly arranged collagen fibers here. So this is also very tough layer and it is resistant to trauma to some extent. But once it is broken, once there is a breach in the Bowman's membrane, it will not regenerate. Okay. So remember the Bowman's membrane, B for bad. So Bowman's membrane will not regenerate. Okay. And hence it will leave behind the scar. So the applied aspect of the Bowman's membrane is, as I told, once there is rupture of the Bowman's membrane or the trauma to the Bowman's membrane, the cornea will definitely have a scar or the opacity in that area. Next, moving on to the third important layer, that is the stroma, also called as substantia propria. So this contributes to 90% of the total corneal thickness. So the thickness of this stroma is around 500 micrometers. So it has 3 important components, that is the collagen, Next is extracellular ground substance, and the third is keratocytes, that is cells. So coming to each part of this stroma now. So this is the stroma. So the collagen fibers are arranged in the stroma in a linear fashion or in different orientation. Usually they run from limbus to limbus, okay? And these fibers, these collagen fibers, say around 25 to 35 collagen fibers are united to form the lamella, okay? There are around 300 such lamella in the cornea which run from limbus to limbus. So what keeps this cornea transparent is because of this arrangement of the collagen fibers only. So the diameter of the collagen fibers, diameter of each collagen fiber is around 25 to 35 nanometer. And the distance between each collagen, distance between each collagen fibers is also around 25 to 35 nanometer. And this is around half of the wavelength of the light, visible light. So there is no scattering of the light because of destructive interference. So this is one of the properties of the light which you study in the optics and refraction. So because of the destructive interference, that is because the diameter of the collagen fibers and the distance between the collagen fibers are less than half of the wavelength of the visible light, leading to the transparency of the cornea. Clear? So the applied aspects of this collagen fibers here only I will tell. So whenever there is corneal edema or the fluid imbibed into the cornea, this arrangement is lost. So the distance between the collagen fibers is increased. So this destructive interference will not occur, and hence there is haziness of the cornea. Okay. The next component is the extracellular ground substance. Here we have the glycosaminoglycans, that is GAGs, glycosaminoglycans. In that we have two important types, that is the keratin sulfate and chondroitin sulfate. The third important component is the keratocytes or the cells of this stroma. So these keratocytes are the major cells in the stroma which contribute around 3 to 5% of the dry weight of the cornea. So how these keratocytes are arranged? These are scattered in the stroma here and there. So these are spindle shaped cells which are scattered in the stroma. Okay. These keratocytes synthesize the collagen and the extracellular matrix, thereby maintaining the volume of the stroma. So this is the function of keratocytes. Clear? This is about the stroma. So let me repeat once again about the stroma. Stroma, also called as substantia propria, contributes to 90% of the corneal weight. It has three main components, that is collagen, extracellular ground substance and the keratocytes. The collagen, around 25 to 35 collagen unite and form the lamella. Around 300 lamella in the stroma. So the diameter of each collagen and the distance between each collagen fiber is equal, and both are less than half of the wavelength of the light, leading to destructive interference, thereby maintaining the clarity or the transparency of the cornea. The next component, that is extracellular ground substance, that is glycosaminoglycans, which have keratin sulfate and the chondroitin sulfate. The third component is the keratocyte, which contributes to 3 to 5% of the dry weight of the cornea. So these are spindle shaped cells which are scattered in the stroma, and they synthesize this extracellular matrix component, thereby maintaining the volume of the stroma. Moving on to the fourth membrane, that is the Descemet's membrane. So recently one more layer is introduced, that is Duas layer, which is pre-Descemet's membrane. So it is lying between the stroma and the Descemet's membrane. But the clinical importance of this Duas layer is not yet established. So we will directly go on to the discussion of the Descemet's membrane. So this is a thick membrane which is secreted by the endothelial cells. Okay. So as it is secreted by the endothelial cells, it is produced constantly throughout life. Produced constantly. So the thickness also varies. At birth it is around 3 micrometer, and as we grow old it becomes 10 micrometer in thickness. It doesn't adhere firmly to the stroma. Okay, so it is loosely attached to the stroma, hence it is easily dissected in our surgical procedure. It is easily detached when you are doing the surgery for cataract also. Okay, there is no elastic material here, but still whenever there is injury to the Descemet's membrane, it will curl inwards towards the stroma. Okay, so that you can appreciate in the slit lamp examination. So if this is also very tough membrane which poses resistance to the enzymatic degradation by phagocytes and the toxins. Okay, so the clinical importance of this Descemet's membrane is whenever there is corneal ulcer. Okay, so this is the cornea. So we have a corneal ulcer here. So when it has encroached up to the Descemet's membrane, this will not give way so easily. So it will just bulge like this because of the raised intraocular pressure, and there is nothing in front of the Descemet's membrane. So it will bulge like this and still offers the resistance and still prevents the perforation of the cornea. So this is called as descemetocele. So this is called as descemetocele. Okay. The last layer is the endothelial cells. Okay. Endothelial cells, which is very important. It is hexagonal shaped cell. So the endothelial cells are hexagonal shaped and they are arranged in mosaic pattern like this. So they are hexagonal and arranged in the mosaic pattern. So how these endothelial cells are detected? It is best appreciated by the specular microscopy. So these endothelial cells are interconnected with each other by zonula occludens, zonula adherens and macula adherens. So this keeps the each endothelial cells adherent to each other as well as to the Descemet's membrane. The next is the count of the endothelial cells. That is very important. In newborn it is around 3000 to 4000 cells per millimeter square, whereas in adults it decreases to 2500 cells per millimeter square, whereas in old age it decreases still to 2000 cells per millimeter square. So if this count goes below 800 cells per millimeter square, then there is endothelial decompensation. So what is endothelial decompensation? The endothelium is not functioning. So what is not functioning exactly in the endothelium is the endothelial pump. So in the endothelium we have very important thing that is called as sodium potassium ATPase pump. Okay. So this helps in constantly removing the water from the cornea, thereby maintaining the dehydrated state of the cornea and making the cornea transparent. Okay. So being in a dehydrated state is one of the factors for the corneal transparency. So whenever there is damage to the endothelial cells, it will not regenerate. Okay. There is no regeneration of the endothelial cells. Only thing what happens is there can be either increase in the size of the existing cells. So the cell which was of this diameter may increase to the larger diameter cell, that is called as polymegathism, or the cell may change its shape. Instead of being in the hexagonal shape, it may become little round or it may change its shape. That is called as pleomorphism. So these are the applied aspects concerned to the endothelium. The one is the sodium potassium ATPase pump. The second is the change in the shape and the size of the endothelial cells as a result of the injury to endothelial cells. So whenever you are asked about the corneal anatomy, so write the diagram which includes the epithelial cells followed by the Bowman's membrane, stroma, Descemet's membrane and the endothelial cells, and explain what all I told you. Next is the blood supply of cornea. As you know, the cornea is avascular structure, but still in the periphery around 1 to 2 millimeters near the limbus there is arcade of vessels, blood vessel, which will provide the nourishment to the cornea. So this is by the anterior ciliary artery. Anterior ciliary artery, which is a branch of ophthalmic artery. This anterior ciliary artery will form an arcade around the cornea and give the nourishment. Whenever there is some insult to cornea, say following some corneal ulcer, where the cornea needs more amount of nutrients and the antibodies from the blood, then the vessels will grow onto the cornea. Okay, so this is called as vascularization of the cornea, which can be either deep vascularization or the superficial vascularization. So once this purpose is served, that is the corneal defect or the corneal ulcer is healed, the blood supply is cut off. Okay, so there is just a vessel which is not having any blood here, that is called as ghost vessel. Okay, so this is about the blood supply of the cornea. Coming to the next important thing, that is the nerve supply of the cornea. So as you know, the cornea is highly innervated. Okay. So if you consider just 0.01 millimeter square area of the cornea, it is having 100 nerve endings. Such is the innervation of the cornea. So the innervation is by the trigeminal nerve. So we have three branches of the trigeminal nerve, that is frontal, lacrimal and the nasociliary nerve. So the cornea is supplied by this nasociliary nerve. So how it goes into the cornea? So along with the optic nerve, the nasociliary nerve will enter the eyeball and it runs in the suprachoroidal space, that is above the choroid and below the sclera. So it will run in the suprachoroidal space and just a short distance from the limbus it will enter into the sclera. Okay, so now it has entered into the sclera. So here it divides and connects with each other and form a plexus around the cornea. This is called as pericorneal plexus. So if you consider the cornea in this pattern, so there will be plexus of these nerves. This is called as pericorneal plexus. So here the pericorneal plexus has around 60 to 80 myelinated nerve fibers here. So from the pericorneal plexus, it will enter into the stroma of the cornea. So when they enter the stroma, they shed this myelin sheet. So there is no myelin sheet when the nerve fibers enter into the cornea. But still they have the Schwann cells which are covering the. So once they enter into the stroma, they form the stromal plexus. Okay. They divide again in the stroma and form the stromal plexus. So if you consider this as cornea, so now the nerve fibers have entered from the sclera into the cornea, into the stroma of the cornea. Again, so they have formed the plexus here. This is called as stromal plexus. Again, they will move further and reach the subepithelial area. They divide again here, okay, and form subepithelial plexus between the Bowman's membrane and the anterior stroma. Move further and divide here, forming the intraepithelial plexus. In the cells of the epithelium, they form the plexus called as intraepithelial plexus. So when they enter into the intraepithelial layer, they lose these Schwann cells also and they become naked. So you will not be able to appreciate these nerve fibers in the cornea. But in the periphery, when they still have the Schwann cells, that is when you observe carefully with a slit lamp examination, you appreciate the white lines in the periphery. They are nothing but the corneal nerves. Even in cases of keratoconus, where the cornea is thinned out, you can make out the corneal nerve fibers. So hope you understood the nerve supply of the cornea. This is from the nasociliary nerve, which is a branch of trigeminal nerve. It enters the eyeball along with the optic nerve, runs in the suprachoroidal space. Just 1 to 2 mm behind the limbus, it will enter into the sclera. Okay, here it divides and form the plexus called as pericorneal plexus. So these are still myelinated nerve fibers. So there are around 60 to 80 myelinated nerve fibers which are forming the pericorneal plexus. And then they move on to the stroma of the cornea. When they move to the stroma of the cornea, they will lose this myelin sheath, but still they have the Schwann cells. So in the stroma, they form the intrastromal plexus. Again, they move anteriorly in the subepithelial region. They form subepithelial plexus. Okay. Here also they have the Schwann cells, but when they move further into the epithelial cell proper, epithelial layer proper, they lose the Schwann cells also and become naked and they form the intraepithelial plexus. So this is about the nerve supply. The clinical importance is whenever there is infection of the trigeminal ganglia, the corneal sensation is decreased, which can lead to neuroparalytic type of keratitis. Okay. So this is about the anatomy of the cornea. Hope this video is helpful to all of you. If you like my videos, please do subscribe to my channel. Press the bell icon for further notifications. Please do like and share my videos. Thank you so much.